It doesn't get any better than this lifestyle. I mean, it's really, you want to talk about a life well lived. Um, there's obviously frustrations everywhere, but man, you take those little bit of frustrations and then you look at all the positives that you get out of it and all the relationships. Man, it doesn't get any better than that.
Well, I mean, we can go back to the combat, but I mean, just on the point that you're talking about right now, the life that kind of you've been able to live, right? You've been overseas, not just in a deployment kind of thing, but you know, or in training, but you've lived overseas too.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, you know,
Yeah. So when I, first got my wings and then trained in the F-16, my first assignment was in Korea. I spent almost 22 months in Korea. First assignment was a young single fighter pilot. It was a blast. Doesn't get any better than that. Like just being able to hunker down, focus on your craft for almost 2 years. And then moved to Japan and then spent the next 2 years in Japan prior to coming here for weapons school as a young instructor. But yeah, that sort of opportunity, regardless of what your career field is, being able to see other cultures. And I mean, you're the same way, but when you look back and you're like, man, I spent almost 7 years out of my 20s in Asia, in another country. Like that's a significant chunk of your life mm-hmm. that 99% of the rest of the US population is never going to experience that. Like even if they're well traveled and they've done things, those are trips. You didn't live like that. So it's cool. And it can be a sacrifice. But man, that sort of opportunity, I think that personal and obviously professional, but mostly personal growth of just being able to see that, definitely broadens your perspective as to what life could be like. And, and you see, and it's even cool when, you get off base in the Middle East and, you can see little facets of American life or see little facets of little pockets of goodness in every single culture. And you're like, man, that's really awesome that, I spent over a year of my life in Kuwait. And the Kuwaitis have a really cool thing in their culture where they vie for and lease lots of land from their government, and they go out and set up camps and tents out in the desert off these lots of land, and they camp for about 6 months a year. And being able to see that and be a part of that, you're like, man, that's like, just how unique is that to walk into someone's tent, their camp that they have set up in the middle of the desert, and spend some time. And so, I mean, those sort of thoughts and experiences just can't be beat. Can't get those anywhere else.
Yeah, no, you're right. You definitely, you pick the good and the bad out of some of the cultures. And it's funny because you get to see some of the things that are, whether it's portrayed on the news or social media or stuff like that. And you're like, they've got it wrong. They're reporting on that wrong, or they are misconstruing what this is because, hey, I lived there or I experienced this. And you've got a little bit more truth data on what it actually is.
Right.
Versus, well, they're telling me that, so it must be factual,
Yeah. Yeah. Or just like everything else, like there's trade-offs. And so you hear about the bad, and it's not necessarily even that the news got it wrong. Like, sure, that's bad, but that was a cultural trade-off. And oh, by the way, look at what they have because of that cultural trade-off. Like they have very low crime rate and their families stay together. Like, okay, cool. Like,
it might be a good thing.
there's trade-offs everywhere, right?